Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Maaike, welcome to Floating in Dreams. This is my hobby YouTube channel. On this channel we chat about makeup as well as a little bit of fashion from time to time. And today's makeup video, as you can see, is going to be my concealer collection. I thought that sort of rounding off the year / in the start of 2022, I can sort of go through my makeup collection and go over some of the things that I have in there. And I kicked off this series with my foundation collection. So I'm going to put that in the description box down below so you can watch it anytime you like. And today we're doing concealers because with concealers, I used to always find myself more of a concealer person rather than a foundation person. I definitely started using concealer before I ever used foundation. And I've got some favorites. And there's also old favorites here that I've repurchased time and time again, as well as some new things. And that's sort of what we've got going on here. So I've got some pot concealers and correctors over here. Then over here we've got like newer things that I haven't tried a lot. Then over here, there are a couple that I actually used up this year or that I'm about to use up because they're in my Shop My Stash. And then we've got some like other things here that are a little bit newer. And then over here, we've got some tried and true repurchase things. So this is what my concealer collection looks like. Now, as with the foundation collection, a little bit of information about what I prefer in terms of concealer before we get into it, because a lot of the things that I like and what I will say I like in a concealer comes down to a couple of main things that I'm looking for. I am someone who doesn't need a whole lot of coverage, and the main area where I like using concealer is on my under eye, as well as like some like other areas of my face, but the under eye is the most important because that's where I've got some darkness going on, and then I like to use the concealer in some places to cover up most of my redness. So that's what I like to do. So for me, it's very important that concealers don't crease too badly, but also that they're not too heavy and cakey. And if they're too heavy and cakey, I always feel they really accentuate any fine lines that I might have, or that they just really pull into creases, or that they really make my under eyes look very heavy. So I like more lightweight formulas that are very hydrating and that perhaps have a sheerer coverage. Those tend to have my preference. However, with concealer, I do like it if it truly conceals. So where with foundations, I like to have as little coverage as possible, you could say. With concealer, I still like to go up to like a medium coverage. That's sort of like my preferred level of coverage because I do have some covering to do. So if it's too lightweight and it doesn't do enough, then I actually don't really see the point of using a concealer, you could say. So that's why we're going to be looking at all of these concealers. I will also be linking you to as many reviews that I have with these up on my blog, because I think I've reviewed almost everything here. If not, I'm going to put other links in the description box as well, because some of these I've used in videos and all that jazz. Here's the thing, I will also be swatching everything for you in today's video because I don't think it will get too messy, and I don't want to cover my rug in makeup. So that's why I didn't do it for the foundations. Plus, for the foundations, I was pretty sure I had like 90% of those reviewed up on the blog. But with these, I'm not entirely sure I have everything there. So I'm going to be swatching these for you. We're going to rave about concealers today. So I hope you're with me for the ride. Grab a drink and let's get and have a look at these concealers. So I think I'm going to start with the potted concealers because there's just far fewer of those than anything else. I like quite a liquidy formula, and very often if concealers come in a pot, I don't love the texture that they have. Case in point, the Catrice Ultimate Camouflage Cream Concealer. This is a revamped version of the previous Camouflage Cream that they did. Camouflage Cream. Try saying that 3 times fast. This is in the shade 010 Ivory, and I bought this to try it for a review. This is what it looks like. I hope the camera focuses on the concealer and not the background. But that's what that looks like. It's got a pretty good shade, and it's got a really nice texture for this kind of concealer. It's perhaps a little heavier than what I'd like to go for, but it is pretty. And I'm actually thinking of maybe trying this against this guy. This is the NARS Soft Matte Creamy Concealer. If you look at this, you'll see that I have used this a ton. I definitely had a minute with this where I was just non-stop using this concealer. And this is a concealer I would like to go back to at some point because I remember really liking it, even though everything about this product sort of goes against what I tend to prefer. And that's why I probably use it so much as well. So this is still really creamy and good to go. So that's lovely. Still feels really good. And I kind of felt when I was trying the Catrice one that this was quite similar. Let me see what shade the NARS is in. This is in Light 1 Chantilly. That's what I have the NARS in. And you can just see that the NARS as well as the Catrice have a very similar texture. So I actually want to do a dupes video, hopefully, if I have enough products. And then my other pot concealer is the Glossier Stretch Concealer. I have this in shade G12. I believe they have come out with other shades since I bought this. And this is one of my favorite potted concealers. It looks like I've barely used this, but it's been through the ringer, this guy. It's very emollient, and this is like borderline, is this going to crease on me? Now, I've got pretty dry skin, so on me, this works really well, but I can tell you that if you have quite oily texture, I would stay away from this because it's just super emollient, and it is very, very thin. And that's why this is always very close to my correctors that I've got lying over here, because this I exclusively use over correctors, because by itself it's really nice, but I feel it needs a little bit more coverage. And then I like going in with this sort of like correcting sort of action to sort of cover my darkness and then put this on top, and that way it works better. So by itself I find it too natural. So let's talk about these then. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Corrector, I think it's just called, in the shade Fair. I bought this for my full face of Charlotte Tilbury. I didn't really like her concealer because it came in like one of those clicky pens that I'm not a huge fan of. So this is the Corrector in shade 1. It's got a nice peachy undertone, and actually this is, for me, I can get away with this as a concealer, even though it's quite peachy. But you will see as we go through some of these concealers as well, that some of them are quite peachy in their undertone, because I do like a bit of peach, because peach is really good for counteracting dark circles and like the blue tone that you get there. So that's the Charlotte Tilbury one. Actually, my favorite corrector is this guy. This is the Peripera Ink Corrector in the shade Peach. I have trouble finding this, so I'm not sure if this is still available. I bought this of Yes Style. And Peripera Ink Corrector I also have in the concealer shade over here. But this one, maybe I should shake it up, is my favorite corrector because it's super liquidy and it just works really, really well. It has a really, really nice texture to it, and it just blends beautifully. As you can see, it's a much stronger peach than the Charlotte Tilbury one, meaning that this is something I cannot wear by itself because it's far, far, far too orange and I applied way too much. Let me see if I can blend it a little bit for you. So this is a lovely product to go under this, because I feel that if you sort of put these two together, you kind of get the Charlotte Tilbury. But this is more emollient and a little bit more glowy, which I do really like in the winter time. So I definitely want to go back to this combo in the winter time when it's like super dark and dreary and my under eyes are just looking like super dark because I go super pale. When it's the dead of winter, I go really Snow White pale, and then my dark circles stand out even more. So this is sort of like my favorite winter combo. And let's just move along the top here. This is the L'Oreal Perfect Match Concealer in the shade 1RC Ivory Rose. And this is one of those very peachy toned concealers that I really like. This is one that I need to start using up because I think it may be about to expire. But as you can see here, it's also very emollient. And this is from their True Match range, and I like the True Match foundation. But as you can see, it also has that pinky peach sort of vibe to it, which is why I like it. And then we have the Fenty Beauty Bright Fix Eye Brightener in the shade Seashell 03. So this I didn't get in a super light shade. because I wanted it to actually do something. Very often I have found that if I get a concealer shade that is too light for me, it doesn't really do much, but this is perfect. It's again very nice and emollient, so this is one I need to go back to really give it a good review, because I bought this for my full face of Fenty and I really haven't used it all that much. So this is one I need to definitely try out more for review. And the same goes for this MAC concealer. This is their 24-hour smooth wear concealer in the shade NW15. This is actually a really nice concealer. I again bought this for a full face of MAC. This is a little lighter than the Fenty Beauty, but I felt that NW20 was going to be too dark, because I have tried NW20 concealers on myself before from MAC, and I never feel they really do enough. And this is more of a medium coverage. It's not as like shiny as some of the other ones that I've got going on here, but this is really, really nice as well. And I tend to use up quite a lot of concealers every year. Like I've got 5 here that I've already used up, and I'm about to use up another one, and I think I can use up another one actually. So I definitely use up concealers quite quickly, and this is one again that I think that if I start using it, I'll probably want to use nothing else. Urban Decay Stay Naked Correcting Concealer then in the shade 20NN. I used to also have the foundation from this line, but that was too mattifying for me and I didn't love it. And I think this is currently the only concealer really that Urban Decay does, and I really like Urban Decay. And this actually is sort of like my perfect match in the winter time. This really nice light bright shade, and I actually found that with this, you do get a lot of coverage, which is why I can get away with this lighter shade. Like this in the wintertime is perfect on me. And then a very new one to me, this is the H&M Cover Up Concealer in the shade Ivory. This I just bought for a full face of H&M Beauty that I did. So if you would like to see it going on, then you can check that out. And this was actually really nice. It's very emollient. And again, it has that bit of peach, which I like. So this is again one that I'm very curious to try more, but this is very new to me. I've only owned this for about 2 weeks. And then one that I think I might have to declutter when I get round to it. This is the Milani Conceal and Perfect in the shade Nude Ivory. This is 110, and this is just a little too full coverage for what I like to go for in a concealer. It is a really, really good shade. I'm not gonna lie, like this shade is really lovely, and I do really like the Milani formula. It's just that this is just a little bit too much for what I like to go for in my makeup collection. And then we're going to throw things here. The Dior Forever Skin Correct Concealer in the shade, do I have that somewhere? 1N. This is the lightest shade available here in the Netherlands. There are lighter shades on the market, but we don't get them, which is a bit of a shame. So I did buy this in the hope that it would work, and it does work for me in the summertime. But this comes with a huge amount of product. How much do you get? 11 milliliters of product. That will take a while for it to use it up. But this is a stunning, stunning concealer. Again, a product that I bought for a full face of Dior that I did earlier in the year. So this is one, again, that I need to try more to really be able to give my thoughts, but I remember really liking it in that video. It does seem to oxidize a little bit now that I'm blending it out on the back of my hand, but you never know how products perform just from trying them on the back of your hand. Then the Peripera Ink Corrector in the shade, this is a skin tone shade. I'm not sure what shade it is because it's only here in Korean, which is great. But it's one of their lighter shades, and like the Corrector, this is so pretty. This is such a great concealer. Actually, I'm thinking that like makeup aesthetic wise, I'm very, very much down with this like K-beauty, like natural, yet still coverage. Like this is so hydrating. And do you just see how far this blends? Like a little goes a long way, and the texture of this stuff is amazing, which is why it's such a shame I can no longer find this anywhere. I hope it wasn't discontinued, because if this runs out, I would definitely want to buy a new one. And then an oldie but a goodie, the Catrice One Drop Coverage Weightless Concealer in the shade Porcelain 003. I remember using one of these up and then I repurchased this. So this one is actually unopened, but I will be opening it up for you in this video because I know I can just get through enough concealers before this is going to expire. I don't think they still do this. It's not one drop coverage. let me be very fair. You need a couple of drops for this to really work, but I feel that for such a watery concealer, again, like the Peripera, do you just see how far this goes? Like, it's got really good coverage, and it was super duper affordable at the drugstore. This, like the Dior, has a little bit of the issue that it gets a little darker around the edges where you're blending it. But this was a lovely concealer, and this is actually, I think, my favorite concealer from Catrice now, because I've got one here that I've used up that I can still like do one swatch with, I'm sure. That used to be my favorite, but I actually think I prefer this texture much better. And then finally, the Ordinary's concealer high coverage formula in the shade. Does it say? Oh, it doesn't say the shade. Oh, it does on the lid. 1.1 Fair Neutral. Let me shake this up. This is one that I bought and then I haven't really used it. So this is again one that I need to try a little bit more. I remember trying it out and liking it enough to keep this in my collection. So this is definitely one that I want to get more use out of. I definitely need to put some of these in a Shop My Stash in the next couple of months to really try them out. This is a thicker texture. But I always use a sponge to blend out my concealer anyway, so that usually has no issues. This is perhaps a little bit light for my liking now, but 1.1N is also the shade I have their foundation in, and that is one that I'm trying to use up before the end of the year. And this is the concealer that kind of goes with it. It's definitely full coverage, but it still has a very thin texture, which I do like. And then we're getting into these 5 guys, and these I need to make sure I keep separate because these guys I've used up this year. And of course with concealers, did you really use them up? I don't know. Usually it's just really difficult to get product out after a while. This is the Zoeva Authentic Skin Concealer. This was a lovely concealer. I really rate this very highly, as I do the foundation in this line. The Born This Way Naturally Radiant Concealer, unfortunately discontinued, so I cannot repurchase this. Not sure if I would, if I could, but this is again quite a peachy tone. Oh, what shades do I have these in? I have the Zoeva one in 010 Absolute, like the foundation. And I have the Too Faced one in Fair. This is again quite peachy and quite emollient. I liked it enough, but as I mentioned, I can no longer buy that. And this is the Catrice concealer I used to love. This is their Liquid Camouflage. I have this in the shade 007 Natural Rose, which is a little bit more like pinky. But again, it's got that peachiness to it, so I tend to like that in my concealers for sure. And I have just found that this is a little too heavy for my liking. So I would go with the 1-drop coverage over this, if they still do it. And then we have the Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define in the shade C3. This has this massive doe foot. This is still one of my favorite concealers. And this is one I will be repurchasing now that this one is gone. This is one of my perfect shade matches. And finally, the Essence Skin Loving Sensitive Concealer in the shade. What shade are you in? Oh, the shade has come off. It was on the sticker on the cap, so I no longer know what shade it was, but it was the lightest one. And it wasn't that light for, and their shade range is, of course, shoddy because it's Essence. But it was a really lovely concealer. I just feel that this concealer is exactly the same as this, but without fragrance. So, depending on what you like, you can sort of go for that. But yeah, S's shade ranges just aren't great. Then finally this little guy, which I hope the camera will focus on. This is the Kiko Skin Tone Concealer in shade 02. And I really like this. This is currently in my Shop My Stash. And this looks like your standard doe foot applicator. But don't be fooled because this has a little roller ball. So you can roll it on and it just works so well. It only comes with 3 milliliters of product though, so you probably use it up quite quickly. I've been using this, I think, since halfway through October, and I'm about done with this because, as you can see here, there's a nice little stripe running through it, so that probably means I have about this much product left. So by the end of this month, I think I will have used this up. And that's why I put this guy in my Shop My Stash as well. This is the Essence Stay Natural Concealer in the shade 10 Tender Rose. And this is one of those like clicky pens that has the product coming out through. And it's not really much of a concealer, really. It's actually a little too natural because it's very pink and very lightweight. But I thought I could at least use it up, but this probably lasts for about 2 weeks because this is only 1.5 milliliters of product, so it's nothing. And it's very light coverage, so you probably need to go in with 2 layers. Okay, so the home stretch, the Appuy Moist Creamy Concealer is another K-Beauty gem that I found through Yes Style. This is in the shade 3 Porcelain. It's not the lightest shade, which is good. And this is, again, it has a bit more of that peachy undertone. This is borderline too dark for me though, but this is another one where I'm like, yup, I could use this up. So I definitely have like 2 or 3 where I'm like, that L'Oreal one and the MAC one and this one I definitely want to use up next year, I'm sure. Then a new concealer to me, I'm not entirely sure what this is called anymore, but this is a Kiko concealer. This was released in their Precious Rituals limited edition, and this is in shade 01. I think it's also called Ivory. And this is like Glossier Stretch Concealer, but in a liquid. It's that emollient, that glossy, and it really has that same shade for me. It was really lovely on. I did really like it. Again, I have a full face makeup look using these products from Kiko. Then we have the Catrice Clean ID High Coverage Concealer in the shade... Can no longer read it because the sticker is gone again. This was far too dark for me, I remember. So this is one that I will be decluttering because this is one that I know I won't get the use out of. It does again have that sort of peachy undertone, so I did like it, but it just oxidized a little weirdly on me and I didn't love the coverage this gave because it was a bit dry and cakey. Another concealer that was sadly too dark for me was from the same, this is another K-Beauty brand. This is their Corrector Cover Perfection Tip Concealer. And I have this as shade 1.5, and I think it was also something like Ivory. And they do lighter shades apparently as a brand, but I couldn't find those on Yes Style when I placed this order. So this is a bit too yellow and a little bit too deep for me, unfortunately. But the consistency was nice. Like, K-Beauty stuff, as I mentioned, I'm actually thinking that maybe next year I should try again to place an order with Yes Style to see if I can find some more products to try because I've been loving everything that I buy there. Then the Nabla Cover Up Stay Full Smooth Concealer in the shade Light Ivory. This is Tarte Shape Tape without it being Tarte Shape Tape. Like, it's too full coverage for me. Too cakey. It is a nice shade, but just look at that, and it's got a very strong scent to it as well, which I don't love. This is just the only thing I use concealers like this for is to cut a crease. So this I may keep this around for that purpose, but it's definitely not mica approved for on my face. That it didn't go very well. I am curious after that new concealer that Nabla came out with though, but apparently it's got one of those sponge tip applicators like the Maybelline Age Rewind, and apparently it doesn't come with a whole lot of product actually, so I'm not sure whether that's going to be my vibe, but I would like to try it because it seems to be more glowy and less full coverage, so it seems to be more my vibe. Then we have the Milk Flex Concealer. Is that what this is called? Yes. This is in the shade Fair. And I actually was planning out a full face of Milk makeup. And then Milk did something because they discontinued their eyeshadows. Like they did these eyeshadow, like liquid shadows that I was very interested in, and they discontinued those. So this is now sort of in my collection, and I'm not really sure what to do with it. I will definitely try it out more, put it in a Shop My Stash, and give it a full try. That's definitely the plan. But yeah, I've got quite some concealer still to try because I did these full face videos. And then you buy them for that video, and then, you know, I need to just put them in a Shop My Stash to really, really be able to give them a good try. And then the OG. And here as well, I'm going to have to open up some of these packages because these are all unopened old favorite concealer. So when I do a declutter in 2022, I'm gonna have to decide whether I actually want to keep all of these or not. So what happens is, if I love a product, I do this for foundations, I do this for concealers, I do this for brow products. Like, if it's a product that I've actually used up and I liked it enough to use it up, I will very often seek out the same or a similar product again. And with these concealers, I've gone through these before and I repurchased them because I like them so much. But I'm like, there are so many different textures around by now, so I'm not sure if I still love it. I feel that there are now other textures that I prefer more, also because I'm getting older. So do I still love these? So I want to swatch these in today's video to see how I feel about these concealers now, so many years later. So this is the Maybelline Fit Me concealer. Who didn't own this stuff at some point? I have this in the shade 15 Fair, and I remember the first time I bought this, I had to buy this in the US because it took ages for it to come to Europe. And I think this may be one that I still like. Yeah, look at that. It's perhaps, I would probably go for a different shade by now, but I can definitely try and make that work. What do you think? And then we have the Rimmel Match Perfection in the shade 010 Ivory. And I remember when I bought this for the first time, it was the first time that I could buy these very light shades from Rimmel here in the drugstore, because Rimmel is another one of those brands that has far more shades available than what they sell here. That's like a running gag for the Netherlands. Like, we get brands and then they only put out like half their line. It's very frustrating because you can go online and see that in other countries the shades are for sale. But where with most high-end brands, you can then usually find a website that sells the products. With a brand like Rimmel, you have to actually go to that country to then find the shade. So definitely in the past, I would always buy Rimmel products whenever I travel to London, because there they had the full range, which we didn't get here. But this was one where I was super excited because I was like, yes, we have that. This doesn't come with a whole lot of product. That's one. And this has also been sitting in my collection for some time, so I'm not sure if it still works. I think actually the packaging has changed. And I never was a fan of this like brush tip applicator. It's just not that hygienic. But it is a nice concealer. I do remember from it having this applicator and also with how little product you get. I mean, it says it's 7 milliliters, but I remember going through this in like 6 weeks. Like, that's how quickly I went through this stuff. And then I actually have two of these. I actually have a mini travel size of this concealer as well, because when I repurchased it, the lady was so happy that I love this concealer so much that she gave me a travel size of the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer in the shade Vanilla. I used this up in the shade Custard, which I always felt was a little bit too deep for me. And Vanilla is just, yeah, it's a good shade. But this is perhaps a bit like that liquid Camouflage deal with the Catrice, where it's not the kind of texture I like going for anymore. And a similar thing here with the Urban Decay Naked Skin concealer. I repurchased this again in a lighter shade than I used it up in. I think I had it in light, and this is fair neutral. So it's in a lighter shade because I was feeling that the shade was a little bit too dark. Now this I've had for a while because this was discontinued a while ago. It's still good to go. So this still feels like it's good to go, like it doesn't smell funny, it doesn't have anything going for it. This is the first time I've opened it. But again, is this my favorite? I don't think so. I actually think I like the Stay Naked a little bit better than I do this. And then finally, the Essence Stay All Day 16-Hour Concealer is one I went through last year, and I loved it. This is also 7 milliliters of product. I have this in the shade 20 Soft Beige, which, hold your horses, yes, this is the deepest shade they do. Which, of course, is ridiculous. But it's such a great lightweight concealer. Like, I used this up in the summertime and it was so, so great. And for how affordable it is, I was like, I just want to have that in my collection at all times because it's that good. This is one of my favorite drugstore concealers. And it's just so lightweight and emollient. And just look at it. It looks very similar to the Urban Decay. So You don't have to spend a lot of money on good concealers, I find. Some of my favorite concealers are actually at the drugstore or like K-Beauty. So for me, that's sort of where it's at. So let me put all of these concealers back into their cubbies. So there you have it. Those are all of the concealers that I wanted to chat to you about today. That is my concealer collection. I hope you were able to get something out of this, that you now get a better idea of what concealers might be on the market, what I like. If you also like a more natural coverage concealer, then maybe I've given you some tips on where to look. I'm not entirely sure. So I hope it was useful in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. I would very much appreciate it if you could do that for me. And if you'd like to stay tuned for more, I do make 3 new videos every single week. So I've got lots more content coming your way. So I hope you would like to stay tuned for more. And then I hope to see you in my next video. Bye-bye.